I'm Nick Westergaard, and this is On Brand, helping you tell your story. My guest this week is Rob Levinson.
And more often than not, people externally think more of you than you do yourself. And that's sort of the secret side benefit of doing this qualitative research. I can really help buoy people up, and I can give them confidence in telling their boldest, best story. As a brand strategist for all these years, really every single thing I do is aspirational. So if I can just get one little nugget of truth someplace, I'm going to tell that story. Because if you tell that story often enough, it becomes true.
Rob Levinson is a corporate brand strategist and personal brand coach who helps leading brands and those who run them get noticed, remembered, and results. As the founder of Leverage Advisors, Rob creates comprehensive brand blueprints for clients seeking the strategic direction and tools required to inform and guide the development or reimagining of their brand. As the founder of Brand You Better, Rob helps individuals from recent graduates to C-suite executives gain the confidence to tell their best and most impactful personal brand narrative. My interview with Rob Levinson is coming right up. But first, as a business-to-business marketer, your needs are unique. B2B buying cycles are long and your customers face incredibly complex decisions. Isn't it time you had a marketing platform built specifically for you? LinkedIn ads empower marketers with solutions for you and your customers. LinkedIn ads allow you to build the right relationships, drive results, and reach your customers in a respectful manner. On LinkedIn, you'll have access to and build relationships with decision makers. Of the 875 million users on the network, 180 million are senior level executives, 10 million are C-level executives. You'll also be able to drive results with targeting and measurement tools built specifically for B2B. And they work. Audiences exposed to brand messages on LinkedIn are 6 times more likely to convert. LinkedIn ads is also ranked number 1 for security, community, and ad experience as part of Business Insider's Digital Trust Study. Make B2B marketing everything it can be and get a $100 credit on your next campaign. Go to linkedin.com/MPN to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/MPN. Terms and conditions apply.
Support for this and all the other podcasts on the Marketing Podcast Network is provided by Momento. Yes, you can use AI to make your job as a marketer easier. Momento is built to put the power of AI in your hands. It can write social media captions, have it watch or listen to a podcast and suggest, then automatically create social media posts to promote the show. Heck, it can even listen to a podcast episode, then write a poem about it you can use on your company blog. Go check it out. MPN listeners can try it for free at bit.ly/MomentoMPN. That's bit.ly/MomentoMPN.
Rob Levinson, welcome to On Brand.
Thank you so much, Nick. I'm excited to be here.
You know, you cover the whole spectrum of brands as organizations, as people. I always feel like the people side of that is, well, it's universal because it applies to everyone. But I feel like in some ways that's the least understood personal branding. So when you talk with someone, whether they're a recent graduate or a C-suite executive, where do you start with building a personal brand?
You know, that's a really good question. It all stems, I think, from confidence. And one of the reasons why people might lack confidence when presenting themselves to others is they haven't given it a lot of thought. And through personal branding exercises, you can basically create your narrative. So someone asks you who you are and what you do, you're able to articulate in a way that feels very comfortable and authentic to who you are. The way that I started doing personal branding, Nick, was several years ago. I had rebranded a global executive search firm. And when I had finished with their blueprint, the CEO said to me, you know, Rob, I have consultants that are on the phone all day long with prospects and clients, and I don't think they're connecting in a meaningful way. Can you do something with personal branding for them? And, you know, honestly, I hadn't given it a lot of thought because at that Well, I hadn't given that a lot of thought as an offer that I would give, but I realized that really the same tenets you use to brand an organization you can for an individual. So I started developing personal branding workshops, and in it I would educate people as to what a brand was, then what a personal brand was, and then create exercises for them to develop the foundation of their personal brand. And it's been really a wonderful journey. I don't get me wrong, I love the corporate work, but the personal branding piece is
Yeah.
so rewarding.
Well, you're helping an individual present themselves better. I mean, it's great to help organizations do things and the people there, but the impact you have on an individual is something special. Now, I don't want you to, hey, give us the whole workshop here for free on the podcast, but you intrigued me with the idea of starting with a definition, because I think for as much as we talk about brand, case in point here on this very podcast, uh, a definition is helpful. So, what do you use as a definition in defining a brand or a personal brand?
Well, my favorite definition of what is a brand was said by Jeff Bezos when he said, "Your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room." And what why that impacted me so was, you can go out there and you can tell your story, but if it's not resonating with your audience, it really doesn't mean a thing. I mean, for example, I might be walking around this planet, Nick, thinking that I'm tall, dark, and handsome. But if no one else thinks that, am I really?
Very, very, very good point. Well, and that's the other thing too. Does it ever come up in that work? Because I'd say that's really dependent on having a good reality check of knowing what that might be. Has it ever come up that people haven't had a good take on or a realistic take on what others if they think that they're tall, dark, and handsome and may not be?
Well, I'm really glad you asked that question because I recently rebranded a wealth manager at Goldman Sachs. And this guy, he was like mid 50s or something, and he felt like he was getting kind of stale and he wanted to do some personal marketing and branding. So when I work with an individual, I go through a series of exercises. I interview them and I ask them a number of questions so I can gauge, well, who do you think you are? Like, what are you good at? Why does somebody hire you? What are some of your strengths? That sort of thing. And I very often use analogies because what I've learned over the years of being in marketing and branding is a lot of times you'll throw out phrases like personal branding or brand statement or vision statement or positioning, and people don't really know what you're talking about, so I use analogies. So I said to this wealth manager, if you were a car, what brand would you be and why? And he said, oh, I'm a Ferrari. And I said, oh, why is that? I'm fast and I'm advanced and people notice me and I get the job done, and I'm a leader. Okay, well, he thinks he's a Ferrari. So then I interviewed several of his clients. And I said, well, when you think of Joe, if he was a car, what brand would he be and why? And they're like, he's a Toyota Camry. Or he's a Honda Accord. Okay, nothing wrong with those cars at all. But I said, well, tell me what you mean by that. And he said, well, you know what? He's a solid guy, gives me good advice, gets me from point A to point B. No muss, no fuss. That's why I like him. So I had to go back to Joe. And I said, well, it's lovely that you see yourself as a Ferrari, but the marketplace does not. So you need to either give me data points to substantiate why you think you're a Ferrari, or we need to readjust how you go to market. So it's really all about the whole perception versus reality thing. So yeah, that's really important. I mean, when I work with an individual, I do qualitative research. I say, after I go through the exercise with them, I say, give me some colleagues, give me some superiors, give me some of your respect, and I'm going to ask them how they perceive you. And the interesting thing is, Nick, that more often than not, people externally think more of you than you do yourself. And that's sort of the secret side benefit of doing this qualitative research. I can really help buoy people up, and I can give them confidence in telling their boldest, best story. As a brand strategist for all these years, really every single thing I do is aspirational. So if I can just get one little nugget of truth someplace, I'm going to tell that story, because if you tell that story often enough, it becomes true.
I love the car exercise because I sometimes I ask these questions here on the show, and I think, geez, that's a hard question. Getting past, because it's so hard to know how to see yourself. But I think that exercise is really valuable. You said Ferrari, and I instantly thought of a joke about being expensive and high maintenance. But the disparity in the vehicle models and what that says about your perception to others is such a useful tool, and especially in this topic of branding and personal branding. That I feel like everybody, when we talk about branding, people go straight to logos anyways.
Right.
And then personal branding. Okay, so you're going to make a logo for a person?
Right.
That it's so much more than that as well. So, what aspects in terms of? I love the idea of a brand blueprint, but what aspects of brand are do you leave someone with in developing a personal brand for someone?
When you say aspects, I don't know what you mean by.
If it's the antithesis of, oh, you're going to make a logo for a person, it's like what does a personal brand, use the S word, strategy,
Yep.
look like?
I'll give you a perfect example. I'm working with somebody now, and he is in his early 30s, and he's very successful in his given occupation, but he wants to leave the industry. So I'm helping him basically develop a story, an overarching brand story that basically will help people understand this is who he is, this is what he's done, and this is why he wants to move to another industry. And here are his transferable skills. So it literally is, Nick. It's literally an overarching brand story. And when we figure out what that story is going to be, then we dial down to these are your three key messages you need to communicate. And I get to those three messages through interviewing him, as well as people in his world who he has worked with. So we come up with an overarching story. We come up with two or three key messages. From that comes an elevator speech. So if he finds somebody at a networking event or a social event, he can say, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is where I want to go. And once he gets that verbal language, I will help him do a LinkedIn reboot, because today, when you're on the phone with somebody professionally, the first thing they do is go to your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
You're not telling a story there consistent with what you're sharing verbally, then there's a very big disconnect there. And then there's also, from the LinkedIn profile, will be a resume reboot as well. So to answer your question, it's an overarching storyline, it's key messages, it's an elevator speech, a LinkedIn, and resume reboot. So basically, every point of contact someone would have with this individual, you're telling a consistent story.
I love the point of the LinkedIn reboot, because even you and I are both people that are very proactively kind of selling ourselves. So we have a website, but everybody has a LinkedIn profile, and you're absolutely right that that's where that kind of social proof of who is this person, why should I pay attention to them, what are they all about? That's where people are heading, and I love that story of someone in transition between I'm working on this, but I'm leaving this field. I'm shifting my focus, because The personal branding stuff is tricky enough, but then how do you change that? You're essentially rebranding yourself. And that, if we don't understand personal branding, something as challenging as a rebrand is tricky and merits some of that deliberate thought that you're talking about there. Is there a transitional phase with any of that of, okay, I'm this currently, and if I'm going to be it for a little bit, and I'm going to move to a new position, a new role, or into leadership? Is there an interim stage of a personal rebrand?
That's a really interesting question. You know, whenever people talk to me about different industries that I work in, and it's everything from high tech to finance to professional services to nonprofits, they say, "Well, Rob, how do you adjust for your audience?" And I say, "You know what? I'm the same wherever I go. I am the same wherever I go, and it's just a matter of me finding the right audience." So when you talk about an interim brand, it's you are who you are. You're a consistent person, but what you can do is through word or deed demonstrate that you want to be seen or viewed in a different way. But your core self doesn't change. You just might find yourself on a different stage. And what your job is to convince the person that you belong on that stage. So, for example, Nick, early in my career, I started out in PR and advertising. And I did the whole agency thing for many years in both New York and Boston. And, I didn't really want a PR career, and I didn't really want an advertising career. But what I was really good at doing was connecting the dots of all these different points of communication for customers. And when I moved from the agency side to the .com side, because that really changed my whole life, I just repositioned myself as a brand strategist. I didn't go to brand strategy school. I don't have any certificate, but I knew how to connect the dots. So I just sort of refashioned myself as someone who's not in one of these silos, but someone who was qualified to sit on top of a brand and then make sure all the other folks that build out the brand, the PR people, the ad people, the web development people, they were all following the same blueprint. So it's a matter of intention. It's a matter of purpose, and it's a matter of you sitting down and saying, okay, this is who I am. This is where I'm going. What can I bring with me to convince people that they should view me on this other stage? It's very intentional. And, speaking to you, Nick, this is like a circle of life moment for me, because I can't believe that I'm actually on the same platform that, my idol, Tom Peters, has been on many, many times. Because Tom Peters really changed my life. And this was in 1997 when his concept was on the cover of Fast Company magazine. It was a story called A Brand Called You. And again, this was 26 years ago. People weren't talking about personal brands, but Tom said at that point, and I'm paraphrasing here, he basically said, you're the CEO of your own company, and your most important job is to be the head marketer for the brand called you. I'm like, oh, that's an interesting thought. I was just an employee then, but now I need to think about myself. And he went on to say there was no single path to success and no right way to create the brand called you, except this: start today or else. That was 26 years ago. And that's when I thought, oh, wait, I can connect all these different experiences I have, and I can weave it up into a bigger, bolder story. And that was a springboard that changed my whole life. And it's just extraordinary to me that I'm talking about personal branding all these years later when it all emanated from A Brand Called You.
On Brand, we'll be right back after this.
As a business-to-business marketer, your needs are unique. B2B buying cycles are long, and your customers face incredibly complex decisions. Isn't it time you had a marketing platform built specifically for you? LinkedIn ads empower marketers with solutions for you and your customers. LinkedIn ads allow you to build the right relationships, drive results, and reach your customers in a respectful manner. On LinkedIn, you'll have access to and build relationships with decision makers. Of the 875 million users on the network, 180 million are senior level executives, 10 million are C-level executives. You'll also be able to drive results with targeting and measurement tools built specifically for B2B. And they work. Audiences exposed to brand messages on LinkedIn are 6 times more likely to convert. LinkedIn Ads is also ranked number 1 for security, community, and ad experience as part of Business Insider's Digital Trust Study. Make B2B marketing everything it can be and get a $100 credit on your next campaign. Go to linkedin.com/MPN to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/MPN. Terms and conditions apply.
Support for this and all the other podcasts on the Marketing Podcast Network is provided by Momento. Upload a video and in just minutes, all the busy work of a production team or PR staff is ready for download. Segments edited, transcripts written, social media captions drafted. Literally minutes, not hours. With Momento, you can upload 30-minute videos and watch the AI recommend 10, 12, even 15 segments to pull out as clips. Use them in Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, and even TikToks to promote the full video. The recommendations are fast and driven by AI. You can edit them to your liking, then output the finished promotional clip in just minutes. Go check it out. MPN listeners can try it for free at bit.ly/MomentoMPN. That's bit.ly/MomentoMPN.
Now, back to the show.
You know, I have the same thought, and I've been lucky enough to talk to Tom Peters here on the show, as you mentioned, and yeah, it started so much of this thinking. It all runs back to that. You know, in talking about you, you mentioned this a bit earlier, but to kind of set up talking about organizational brands, you mentioned, you know, being a Madison Avenue veteran, a .com survivor. How does that background and that kind of crucible where you've been fashioned as a brand builder inform your work and how we build brands today?
You mean, how does my history get me to where I am?
That's that was maybe a clunky way that I said you've been through a lot.
Yes, I have.
With Madison Avenue, the surviving the .com. How does that inform how your approach to how brands are built today?
All right. Can I just tell you something super personal that's sort of off topic here, but very relevant?
Sure.
Okay. So 15 years ago, I came out. So I had a wife, and we're still very close. We're good. And I have 2 children. And all of a sudden, my mid-40s, I'm like, shit, you're gay. And I just needed to embrace that. So you want to talk about a rebrand? Go from being a suburban dad to all of a sudden being, you know, single and gay. And I thought to myself, well, how is this going to land? Like, am I going to lose clients? Are people going to look at me strangely? Like, how do I make this, how do I rebrand myself, like, as a gay person? And you know what, Nick? The thing of it was, I was the exact same person. And I was able to say, okay, you know me as this, but now I'm revealing something else to you. But my core values, my purpose has not changed at all. And I think, you know, I don't know if you know anybody who has gone through this process, but when you come out, at least in my experience, people are like, oh boy, well, if he can share that, then I believe anything he has to say. And I think I've brought that confidence with me into my corporate clients, because I understand what it's like to be seen as one thing and then want to be viewed as something else. I bet you weren't expecting that answer.
No, but it's incredibly relevant. And I'm thinking about I know when we talk about leadership, that sharing your own personal background, stories, vulnerability is an incredible tool in building trust. And it made me think that your story is very much in line with that. And it made me think that even if that is not someone's specific story, that there are Are there versions of that out there that are relevant details that inform who you are and how you do what you do?
Well, it speaks to authenticity, and I know a lot of your guests in the personal branding side have talked about authenticity. And I'm reminded of a story. This was many years ago, and I had already come out, and I was pitching. There was a big professional services firm that was doing a big rebrand, and Nick, they did the most awful thing. They had reduced it down to three different vendors, and I was one of them. And the awful thing that they did is they had the three vendors sitting in the reception area, and we were going in one after the other to present, our capabilities. And I walked in there just by my lonesome, but I'm with these other firms, and they have young, attractive people with multimedia presentations, and I was just kind of me. Anyway, I was the third guy to go in. And after I was done, I did some Q&A, and I presented my capabilities, and I shared some case studies, and I, fielded some questions they had about the actual engagement. And the CEO raised his hand and said, Rob, we've seen three firms come in here, one after the other. He said, and you're all kind of saying the same thing. Why should we hire you? I'm like, oh, bring it. Bring it. You didn't know you have asked. And you know what? Here's the thing. I have no doubt that those other two firms would do an amazing job. In fact, I don't have any doubt that you could have a queue 3 blocks long of vendors who could get you where you need to go. But at the end of the day, you have to look at me and you have to say, do I like him? Do I think he's smart? Do I think he's an expert? Do I want to deal with him? Do I want to have him ingrained in my company? I said, if I'm the right person, then vote for me. But if I'm not, I can't be something that I'm not. It's like, what am I going to say? My technology is better, or I'm taller. Just like this is either working or it isn't. And they hired me. And I thought to myself, okay, dude, this is your new positioning. Just like, be an expert, get the job done, but be who you are, because your personality and your energy is going to resonate with certain clients. And if it doesn't resonate, then you don't need that job anyway. So again, it's about being authentic. I mean, you have to have a foundation of intelligence and expertise, and you have to be able to deliver against what someone is hoping for you to be. What people want you to be. But at the end of the day, you have to be yourself. You have to be yourself, and that's what will resonate.
That is so true, whether you're an organization or an individual. Being yourself. I love the Oscar Wilde quote. I always use it because everyone else is already taken. Rob, you've made me smile many times during our conversation. And as we start to wrap things up, it is a time for me to ask you for a brand that has made you smile recently.
Okay, well, you can smile in a nice way or in a sarcastic way.
Yes.
The brand that's making me smile now, it's the royal family.
Oh.
I can't look away. I can't look away. And what's really interesting to me is talk about a rebrand. I mean, not since Tim Cook replaced Steve Jobs at Apple has the new, quote, CEO stepped into such huge shoes.
Yeah.
Here's King Charles, who's waited 70 years for this job. And finally, he's going to get it. And I'm super curious how he's going to rebrand the monarchy to make it more contemporary, more relevant, all while having this family food fight. And it's really fascinating to me how the royals are going after each other, all while literally during a coronation. So they're making me smile because, one, I'm digging the dysfunction, and I love that they're playing this stuff out on a global stage. You can't believe it. But I'm also smiling because I'm kind of rooting for King Charles. because I do think he's trying to modernize. He's trying to make the monarchy relevant. And I'm going to be very curious as to how he does that. Also, I'm smiling about Camilla because never in the history of man has there been such a career trajectory to go from mistress to queen. Let's just leave it there.
I was going to say, talk about someone that would be working on their own personal brand throughout all of that. So definitely, definitely fascinating. Rob, where can folks go to learn more about who you are and what you do?
So the first place for personal branding, it's brandyoubetter.com. BRANDYOU better.com. That's my personal branding side. And for my corporate branding, it's Let's Leverage, LETSLEVERAGE.com. And go to either one of those sites and you'll learn more about me than you possibly ever wanted to.
Awesome. Well, we will link up to all of that in our show notes, which folks can always find at onbrandpodcast.com. Rob, thanks for being on brand with us.
Nick, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
On Brand is part of the Marketing Podcast Network. If you like what you're hearing, if we've made you smile, you can always listen free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever your favorite platform may be. And please take a moment and rate and review the podcast to help others find the show. Until next week, I'm Nick Westergaard, and I'll see you on the internet.
This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.